This is a journey into sound. A journey which will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Yeah.
You know, you probably saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Yes, I did. I went from Kennedy getting shot in
that,
'63. Yeah, so we were talking about the effects of you know, the pivotal points in my life that led me through a musical path. Leaving Cuba for communism, then Kennedy getting shot. You know, were you born yet?
No.
Oh, okay. So I got to tell you, it's like this. You know, the most loved president, and since I've been in the United States since 1961, right? He gets shot, and it was devastating.
I don't
Devastating.
think people can imagine. I can't imagine.
Yeah, devastating. Okay, so we went through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve. You think it's going to be bad this season? No, you should have been there when Kennedy got shot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, if you think, you know, this coronavirus having an effect on the holidays.
This is child's play.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the people, there was that collective consciousness again. And there was people had a, it was like a belief in.
Yes.
Everything added up to something in those days.
Yeah.
Right? 2 and 2 equals 4 in your mind as a culture, where that's so long gone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Camelot, you know. Okay, so here comes this little innocent little performance on Ed Sullivan in February. And we, the kids, you know, the kids, I mean, if right now, the kids going through coronavirus are going to be the first one who are going to say, you know, I got to be a kid. You know, I got to go back to being a kid here, because this is my only chance to be a kid. You guys were kids already. You know, I'm never going to.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. It's like whatever we were trying to accomplish at that age, at least we had a world to accomplish it in.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder the kids are burning shit. And I mean, you know, I know where you're going.
Okay, so here comes the Beatles, and it's like, it was hysteria. It was like, it gave our generation a light at the end of the tunnel. Something to look forward. It's just like, okay.
Something to believe in again, right?
It came from somewhere else. England didn't come from the United States, because the United States was too gloom and doom at the time, you know, because of Kennedy getting shot. So it's like, oh my God, a distraction, basically. A distraction that, I gotta say, you know, most of the people in the industry, music industry, thought, oh, this is passing. But we'll take it, because we're gonna make money from this.
Right.
People jumped in, you know, for either merchandising, making Beatle wigs and little lunch boxes, and the Beatles coming back to Ed Sullivan, record sales going through the roof, kids buying records. It was kind of like taking the focus away from the traumatic experience that just happened, like November, December, January, February, three months before, you know. Yeah. And it was like, okay, let's get us back in track, you know, with the kids. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, if you like the Beatles, we got the Stones and we got the Kinks. I mean, so it's the British invasion happened. But the government, the US, who had already put a damper on rock and roll, you know, Chuck Berry going to jail, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis was not, you know, had married his cousin. And it was kind of like, ooh, you know, persona non grata. Elvis in the army.
I was just thinking, Elvis in the army. I wonder how much of that was calculated. Because, I mean, if he was right, I mean, he was poised. And they just shut him down.
Yeah. It's the same thing happened with rock and roll music. Yeah, they don't want rock and roll music, but they could not stop what was coming in from England. It's another country. You have no control of that. Well, we're gonna make some money on this. Okay, so we let it go, and the kids, you know, keep them distracted and occupied and other things. Meanwhile, we're gonna have the Vietnam War. But you got to rock and roll, you know. So we, you know what I mean. So it's deflecting. It's deflecting the generation.
It's so awesome, Rudy, because I've never heard anybody express it that experienced it that way. I mean, people now, you see the Beatles, you just take it for granted. They're the Beatles. Maybe if Kennedy hadn't got, all those things that added up to the Beatles having that impact, most of them had nothing to do with the Beatles. They were way beyond their control, right? And that energy of not only what the Beatles were capable of on their own, but what they were getting back from the impact they were having is what allowed them to grow into what they ultimately became. Sgt. Pepper, I always say Revolver, well, actually Rubber Soul, but Rubber Soul's the record, because that set the table for Revolver, which, if Sgt. Pepper's, that was for the pub, but as artists, man. And none of that could have happened without that cycle of it feeding the artist. And that is what I believe is also a big element that's not really in the equation anymore. That's why the music isn't able to deliver as an art form. It's like the teeth have been taken out of it. And it's so interesting to hear that, because now I really understand, wow, there's a reason the Beatles are the Beatles. You know what I'm saying? So that that context of understanding it.
Well, they spent years in, outside of England and Hamburg, playing copy music, being able to filter just about, they could take a song by the Shirelles or Motown or whatever and make it their own, right? Which meant that once the Beatles individually, whether it's with Ravi Shankar, George Harrison, or John Lennon with Bob Dylan, or Paul McCartney with Brian Wilson, the influence, they could influence and put that in their music and come out on their own. So here you got Bob Dylan, you got the Beatles, you got, Brian Wilson, you got the Doors, you got everybody, you got the Stones, and it's like everybody's pushing everybody up higher. It was incredible.
That collective consciousness, because everybody's feeding off that same energy, because it's concentrated, right?
Yeah.
Ron Howard did a documentary, and it's the real early days. It's like a show I think they did in Liverpool or Manchester, still Beatlemania. And what's unbelievable, and they even said it themselves, they go, we never heard ourselves play before, because they had these little binky little like auditorium PAs. They were singing through the house. And when you go back and listen to that performance, and just how in tune they are as sing, just their command as a unit, it's mind-boggling. And I always say this, like your generation of musicians, I try to explain to kids, you know how good you had to be? Like, I remember the guy playing guitar at my bar mitzvah. Like, just to be a competent professional musician in the 60s, 70s, 80s, Zappa found Baloo and Holiday Inn, right? Let alone the level you got to.
I was one of those guys.
Right, you could have played, but if you would have been working, if you had a lot of things go your way, but you would have been working, you would have been playing bass somewhere with something you did.
I did.
You had to have a level of competency that, I'm not saying musicians now can't play, but you go on YouTube and there's a 7-year-old girl playing Eruption. She doesn't understand what she's playing. That's the access to the information.
Exactly. They're not playing a song. They're playing a guitar part. To play a song, that's a completely different consciousness. Because you have to understand music. Even if you don't have a music theory background, you got to understand music itself.
Well, you got to feel it, I think. Actually having a command over what you're doing. And that's different for everybody. That's why I say there's no age with music. Like I told these kids, I said, the first thing I said to them is like, when we're working on music, there's no age, but that comes with a responsibility, which is you have to be willing to hear the truth within whatever it is we are doing. And that's where this sort of like, kids these days are a little soft, they're not good at handling, forget constructive criticism, just but these kids were good like that. They could handle it. They could deal with it. Because I'm like, the only way you're going to reach your potential is to look at the things you're not doing so well and get better at them. The only way to get better at them is to point them out and acknowledge they exist, right?